Good evening. I'm Chris Mathews in Washington. Leading off tonight, moment of truth. President Obama's speech before a joint session of Congress next week comes after a terrible summer of town hall meetings, conservative demagoguing on this health care reforms, and falling approval numbers. He's proven he's mortal, the president has. Now he needs to prove he knows how to get off the canvas when he's down. He needs to forget about working with the help of the Republican Party, which has decided to bring him down again and again. And he has to convince Democrats in Congress and the public at large that health care reform is most certainly better than the health care system we have as it is. Also, the man who's set to take over as head of the AFL-CIO, Richard Trumka, says the public option is essential to health care legislation. So is big labor going to walk out from health care reform? And is the president going to lose the help of those people who helped elect him if he drops the public option in order to win over the moderates? Anyway, that's my question for Richard Trumka tonight. Meanwhile, the Obama White House needs to figure out how to confront the right-wing media machine when the President of the United States is called a socialist for trying to make a back-to-school speech to children. And the White House doesn't know how to respond. There's a problem there. When are we going to learn how to avoid being tackling? When are they going to learn how to avoid being tackling dummies for the far right? Well, this summer of discontent is causing a lot of Democrats to worry that they'll lose far more seats in next year's midterm elections than anyone imagined even a few months ago. Charlie Cook, the best in the business, will survey the landscape in the Politics Fix tonight. And could it be that Cheney and Palin are going to be running mates in 2012? And that's why some people think that that could be the Democrats' actual dream opponents next time. That's in the Hardball Sideshow tonight. We start right off the bat with President Obama's speech to the Congress next week. Steve McMahon is a Democratic strategist, and Lawrence O'Donnell is an MSNBC political analyst. Gentlemen, I want to start with Steve McMahon. The president speaks to the nation and to the Congress in a joint session next Wednesday night. Lots of hoopla, a big audience, at least starting off that night. They'll begin to watch him. What does he need to do to convince enough Democrats in the country, enough independents in the country, to support health care so that 218 members of the House of Representatives and perhaps 60 senators, all Democrats, potentially, can vote for his plan?
Well, the first thing he has to do is decide whether or not he really needs 60 senators, because if he does, he's going to have to move to the middle. If he doesn't, he can move to the left. And so that's a critical consideration. I know there are a lot of people who believe that reconciliation is a possibility. Lawrence, who's worked in the Senate longer than I have, knows that reconciliation is primarily for budget and finance issues, and the question is whether you can do these kind of insurance reforms in reconciliation. For most Americans, it's the insurance reforms that affect them. They have health insurance, but they don't want to be denied for a pre-existing condition, have to pay more if they get sick, or get canceled if they lose their job. And those are the things that most Americans care about. To most Americans, the public option is something that might be nice, but it's not something that they view as essential, even though the left right now views it as absolutely critical.
Well, the problem is, Lawrence, isn't it that his party has scattered? You've got the left over there taking positions, hard positions, and you have moderates worried they can't sign on to much of anything.
Exactly. Nancy Pelosi has issued her veto threat. She did that yesterday. She said she's going to veto it if there's no public option. Now, all the evidence is that you can't get a public option through the Senate. So we have now an impossible political formula between these two bodies. And on reconciliation, the thing that is lost in this discussion about reconciliation is reconciliation requires 50 votes plus the vice president for final passage only. During the process of reconciliation on the Senate floor, there are countless votes that require 60 votes because it requires you to waive the rules of reconciliation. That's done constantly in every single reconciliation process that goes to the Senate floor. They can't think about going to the Senate floor without 60 votes, whether they're doing it in reconciliation or outside of reconciliation.
So, look, it seems to be the consensus, certainly that's my view, with Lawrence's is my view. I think they need to get 60 votes. If they need to be 60 votes in the Senate, and Pelosi says you're not going to have the kind of bill that will get 60 votes, he's got a party in disarray. He has to bring his party together. So why is he going on national television? Why isn't he going to the Democratic caucus on the Hill and say, we're not leaving this room? I want to ask that to Lawrence in a minute. Why don't we all get in the room together, all the Democratic members of the Senate and the House, get them all in one room together and say, we're not leaving this room. We'll start at 8 in the morning until we have a bill we all can agree on, because we all have to agree on it. Right. There must be 60 senators, assuming Massachusetts gets its act together and appoints a senator in the next couple of weeks.
There are two things going on here. One is what's best for the president's brand. And remember, he was the guy who was going to come to Washington to change the tone and to bring people together. And he needs to kind of reestablish that brand, if you will, for his own survival. And the second thing that has to happen is Democrats have to decide whether or not they're going to let the left bring this bill down, because that's right now what's going on. It's not going to be the right.
The Democrats decide. Nancy Pelosi is doing this. She is not letting the left bring the party down. She is taking, by your definition, she is the party. Here's what she said, quote, "A bill without a strong public option will not pass the House." She's basically giving a bottom line to the president.
And what the president is hearing is that a bill with a public option will not pass the Senate. So he's got to figure out whether he's going to let the Republicans bring this down because there is a public option, or let the left bring it down because there's not. And I think he's got a greater ability to bring the left to his side than he has an ability to bring the right over. And frankly, I think if he gives a speech where he says the right wants to do nothing and that's not an option because it would be a disaster for the country, the left wants to do everything right now and we can't.
Okay, here's the problem, Lawrence, and you guys know this. You get people elected. Lawrence worked on the Hill. I'm glad we have all three of us to know what we're talking about for once. Let me tell you, here's the problem. You got half the Democratic caucus, at least, that all they care about is primaries. And all they care about is primaries from people who are younger than them and people to their left, because otherwise they can't be beaten. The other half of the caucus, all they care about is general elections.
That's right.
So they got two parties here. They don't have one party, do they, Lawrence? They have the party that worries about general elections and the party that has never seen a general election. And the party that's never, the Brooklyns and the San Francisco party have no idea what a general election looks like. They've never faced a Republican opponent. They have to go to work every day with people from awful flyover country like Missouri and places like that they would never go to. But those people are the people they have to go to if they want to run the Congress and be chairman of committees and speakers of the House. Would somebody please tell these people they're not Speaker of the House, they're not chairman of these committees, unless they bring in these people they consider bumpkins into their caucus and actually respect them as equals. Your thoughts, Lawrence? Those were my thoughts.
That's exactly it. That the most valuable players in either party are those senators and congressmen who come from swing states and swing districts. They come from the places where they can possibly lose their seats. That's what gets you a majority. You don't get them, as you just said, Chris. You don't get a majority from the left or the right. And so that's the dilemma that they're facing right here. But what you're seeing is the development of the notion that what could come out of the process is a bad bill. And so then if you have what is considered a bad bill by certain Democrats, then they are voting against what they consider to be a bad bill. They're not being spoiled brats and saying, you know, my thing isn't in there, therefore I'm voting against it. And in this kind of legislation, it is very easy for the bill to get twisted into something that turns out to be bad.
Why don't they try to write a good bill that doesn't have the language? Here's a question. If the ultimate goal is accessible, affordable health care for everybody, so that the millions of people that don't have health care get it some way, it may not necessarily be a public option. It may be a regulated insurance industry.
That's right.
Why don't they go that route if they have to?
Well, I think there are a lot of people who want to go that route, and Lawrence is absolutely right. That's the way a Democrat who opposes this bill is going to position it. But the Democrats have an opportunity to position it so that a Republican would have to then defend a vote against making the denial of, this is a double negative, so it gets a little confusing, but basically you have a bill that could just do insurance reform, which would make denial of pre-existing conditions illegal, that could guarantee coverage to everybody who wants it. You couldn't get canceled if you're sick, and you wouldn't pay more if you were older or something else. You could put Republicans in a position where they have to vote against that bill by taking out the public option. Right now you're going to put Democrats in a position of voting against that bill if there's not a public option in it. I like the first scenario a lot better than the second scenario.
Okay, here's the speech problem. Could it be that the president has to be, once again, elusive, if not deceptive? Lawrence, tough question. Might he have to bait and switch? Suggest he's for a public option to get the House to pass a bill. Then when he gets to conference and he has to sell the compromise, he sells that to the House. Lawrence, two-step.
Well,
one step, sell the public option. Second step, dump it.
Luckily for him, it's been 16 years since Bill Clinton did exactly that to the House of Representatives on the BTU tax, and so a lot of the institutional memory is gone. But this is what could provoke a revolt in the House if Nancy Pelosi tries to go first, if she tries to force a vote before it is clear that the Senate is able to act. She may get a revolt because she forced a vote on cap and trade before it was clear that the Senate was able to act. We now know the Senate is not able to act. And so last time time around, when the Clinton bill was trying to get through, the House said, we will not vote until we see the Senate vote. The health care bill went out on the Senate floor, it got destroyed, and the House never did vote.
So this is an after-you situation, the reverse of an Alphonse and Gaston. You go through the door first.
Exactly.
It seems to me the Senate has to indicate through its leadership that they're going to go to conference with something in the range of what the Democrats in the House want, or the Democrats in the House will not pass a bill. So in other words, the Senate has to show, even if it's a fake, a head fake, they got to make it look like they're about to do it for the House to do it first. Right. Because the Senate is not going to do it first.
Well, the Senate Health Committee has already done it. Lawrence is absolutely right.
The Health Committee has. Okay, let's get back. I only got a couple minutes here, Steve. You're the expert. Communication, then Lawrence. What's the president got to do and why is he speaking to the American people Wednesday night if the real market, the real target, are the people on the Hill?
I think it's about the Obama brand. He basically has to lift this thing up.